This week's Parsha, Tazria, means she bears seed, and it speaks about the commands the Lord gave to women after childbirth, or as it translates from the Hebrew, after she bears seed. Side note, the Tazria portion is oftentimes, like this year, part of a double portion week along with Metzorah. But since on Hebrew leap years it is separate, and also because I have a separate message from Metzorah coming soon as the Lord is willing, I decided to have Tazria as its own message this week. Although Judaism is considered by many to be mainly patriarchal,
I'm the man in the house. I'm the head of the family.
You may be surprised to hear that there is much value that is given to women in Judaism. They have many things that they are entrusted with, and they have so much to contribute. As a basic example, women are not to be mistreated, but to be held in high esteem, just as Abraham held Sarah, Isaac held Rebekah, and Jacob held Rachel and Leah. However, because there are many out there that believe that women have a second-class role in Judaism, if you'd like to learn more about the role of women throughout the Bible and whether they should be silent, as I have heard throughout my life back when I was a Christian, the Should Women Be Silent video will be linked down in the description. Aside from bearing children, another role that women have, according to the Bible, and fits in line with our parsha this week, is the raising up of godly children. There's a lot of pressure on us women to be the perfect woman, perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect homemaker, the perfect employee, etc. There's a lot to juggle, and not many of us have had much mentoring on the subjects at hand, so we've had to wing it, so to speak, and some of us feel like we are failing miserably. In researching this video's topic, I found an article on mikvah.org, and I would like to share some excerpts from it with you. While I was growing up in the suburbs of America, I never actually knew any Orthodox people, but somehow I knew all about them. A friend, while driving past the home of one of the few observant families in our town, once authoritatively commented that Orthodox people are dirty and unkempt. It is interesting how long that single comment has remained in my memory. My children are now nearly as old as I was when I first heard it, and now from my vantage point as a mother with small children, whose home is not nearly as kempt as I would like it to be, despite a daily and valiant struggle with dishes, laundry, and toys, I feel for the mother of that long-ago family. Actually, I rather admire her. Subject to the scrutiny of her fashionable two-child-and-a-dog American dreaming neighbors, she unfailingly maintained her grasp on the age-old Jewish dream. She knew that the toys strewn about the yard were temporary, but the patience shown her children as they grew was forever. She realized that the uninspired state of her flower beds was totally irrelevant in relation to the roses blossoming inside the house. The embarrassment she felt, and I am certain any woman would feel, was allayed by the future promise of her young messmakers. I dearly hope they are fulfilling it, bringing her nachas and joy to the end of her days. Other information I garnered during my youth about Orthodox and Hasidic people came from liberal interpretation of Torah and Jewish traditions. Feminists, disgruntled with patriarchal Western society, plucked single phrases, customs, and laws from their living context to prove that Judaism too was in dire need of reform. When I finally met, quite by accident, or so it seemed, an honest-to-goodness Orthodox lady, I turned down in horror her offer that I come with her to shul, a shul that had hated mechitza, that quintessential representation of the Orthodox oppression of women that separated the men and women during the services. Well, that feisty lady told me that she won't be considered oppressed until she's ready, and that in any case, I have a standing invitation for Shabbat lunch. Curiosity got the better of me, and thus I finally made the acquaintance of a real Orthodox family, in real Orthodox surroundings, with hats and mechitzas and only slightly untrimmed shrubbery. It was the end of the summer. Since then, I have thought a lot about the preconceptions I had, and the complaints against Jewish rituals that supposedly indicate the second-class status of women in Jewish life. Like my spunky hostess, I cannot agree that I have encountered systematic oppression of myself as a woman by Orthodox men, whether subtle or overt. In fact, I actually find that I am treated by observant men with more dignity and respect. Respect for me as a private person, for me as an intellect rather than a body, for me as the head of my own household, for me as part of a sanctified union, for me as the mother of a new generation of Jews. This respect is sometimes conveyed by limiting eye contact or by not engaging in casual conversation in the supermarket or other public places. This behavior may be a source of misunderstanding. Someone could interpret it as disdain rather than respect. Yet it is not. But for this, you'll have to take me at my word, unless you dare to see for yourself, leaving, of course, your preconceptions at the door. As for the classic complaints against Jewish law and ritual, it seems to me that they are also taken out of context. That is, the entire context of Jewish life in which they are meant to be implemented. Is it not unfair? The same Torah that commands men to say, "Who hath not made me a woman?" says, "The wisdom of a woman builds her house, and he who has found a woman has found goodness." The same Torah that does not require women to perform any mitzvos that are bound by time, to fill in 3 daily prayers, entrusts a woman with almost total responsibility for the 3 mitzvot most basic to the continuity of the Jewish people: kashrut, Shabbat, and family sanctity. The same Judaism that gives a man the privilege to lead the community in prayer and read in public from the Torah firmly obligates him, and only him, in the marriage contract to provide his wife with financial support, garments, and marital satisfaction. It commands him to love his wife as he does himself and to honor her more than himself. The same Talmud that describes women's intellect, or dat, as light, ascribes to them an extra measure of binah, or understanding. This example alone proves the need to judge Judaism only by close familiarity with its terminology and conceptual framework, for the English translations and subsequent connotations of the English words lend nuances that are not true of the Hebrew. I would also like to read to you the Eshet Chayil, oftentimes referred to as the virtuous wife passage from Proverbs 31, beginning at verse 10. Who can find a virtuous wife? For her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband safely trusts her, so he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and willingly works with her hands. She is like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She also rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and a portion for her maidservants. She considers a field and buys it. From her profits she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and strengthens her arms. She perceives that her merchandise is good, and her lamp does not go out by night. She stretches out her hands to the distaff and holds her hand to the spindle. She extends her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is clothed with scarlet. She makes tapestry for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies sashes for the merchants. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. She watches over the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her the fruit of her hand, and let her own works praise her in the gates. Many times, especially in my time as a Christian, I have felt so discouraged when I read that passage, because I do not do many of those things, and apparently this passage doesn't seem to describe me. However, when I began my journey into Messianic Judaism, I looked up the meaning of the Proverbs 31 passage with regards to Jewish women in particular. I found an article that amazed me and changed my perspective with regards to that passage. And now that I am a Messianic Jewish woman myself, it helps me to see these things in a whole new light. If you would permit me, I would also like to read a portion of that article right now. Both of the articles that I've read from will be linked in the description box. There's a little note that has circulated around the internet world lately that says, to-do list. Wake up, do something amazing, go back to sleep, do something amazing. But what about those days when amazing seems a bit out of our reach? When it's all we can do to stumble out of bed and to the coffee pot and pray our children don't wake up until the caffeine is moving through our veins? What about those days when we just don't feel like we have any amazing left in us? Those days when our knees seem to creak a bit more than they did previously, and our brains seem a bit foggy and weary, and our hearts are heavy with fear and worry. What then? And what does God have to say to us as women about our value, about our to-do lists? This afternoon, I'd like to spend our next few minutes together looking at those questions and exploring some of these ideas. I think there is a bit of a myth in the church today that the valuable women are the ones who do a lot, who seem to have everything all pulled together both at home and in their life outside the home. We honor those who are capable and able to give many hours to various events and programs at the church, and don't get me wrong, churches wouldn't function without the help of people willing to give of their time. But what about those for whom home life is especially challenging and the abundant hours of service just aren't feasible? Or those of us who have health challenges that make it difficult to do a lot? I want to invite us this afternoon to consider how we might honor, celebrate, and bless one another as we each accomplish the ordinary, everyday tasks that lay before us. How many of you are familiar with Proverbs 31, especially the verses that pertain to describing a virtuous woman? In many churches, this is a passage of scripture that is held up as describing the characteristics of the perfect woman. I recently wandered by a Christian bookstore to browse, and I was amazed at how many books and resources there actually are for women based on this one passage of scripture. If you haven't read it, it's basically a description of Superwoman. The virtuous woman rises while it is still dark to begin her day. She stays up late into the night continuing her work. She provides food for her household, buys and plants vineyards, manages the family land and wealth, clothes her family with homemade clothing, takes care of the poor, praises her husband, speaks with wisdom and kindness, is not idle, is praised by her children, and fears the Lord. Phew! I'm exhausted just reading that list. Most women walk around with the sense that they are disappointing someone. I know, I've been there. Whether it is the sense that I disappointed my parents somehow, or that I had let down a good friend by not spending enough time with her, or that I've let down my spouse by not being something he was hoping for, or that I've let down God because I didn't think I had done enough to please him. I look at the world around me and I see this subtle sense of competition and disappointment among women everywhere. The sense of not doing enough or not having enough or not being as good as one of our neighbors permeates the internet with sites like Facebook and Pinterest. As women, we envy others' homes, fashion sense, marriages, children, decorating styles, jobs, and social lives. We feel twinges of disappointment that our own lives don't look the way we had always dreamed they would. I think many of us might live in a constant state of fear that somehow we aren't doing enough. We aren't doing enough to prepare our children for school or college. We aren't taking enough care of our own bodies. We don't exercise every day. And sometimes we put meals on the table that aren't full of fresh vegetables like the news tells us they should be. Something bad might happen someday in our marriage or family or career. And deep down, we are so afraid that if it does, it will be because we didn't do enough. Friends, if you resonate with any of these thoughts today, I want to offer some words of hope from Proverbs 31, actually. Proverbs 31 isn't a to-do list for us. Rather, Proverbs 31 is actually a beautiful poem that Christians have misread and misused for a long time now. In the Jewish community, this passage of scripture is not seen as a poem written to women to burden them with more and more work. It is a poem that the men of the community memorize and say over their wives as words of praise and blessing for who she is and how she has contributed to their family. In many families, it is a weekly ritual as part of the Sabbath meal. It starts out with the Hebrew phrase Eshet Chayil, which is actually best translated as woman of valor. Most English versions say something like a capable wife or a virtuous woman, but when the whole poem is read together in the Hebrew, the translation of woman of valor ends up making the most sense. Valor isn't a word we use much today. In fact, I had to go look it up to find out what it actually meant. It means a strength of mind or spirit that enables a person to encounter situations with firmness and personal bravery. Husbands and other men in the community use these words, Eshet Chayil, to praise their sisters and wives. Women of valor, women of bravery, of strength, of courage. Eshet Chayil is at its core a blessing, one that was never meant to be earned, but to be given unconditionally. It's also a phrase used in Jewish culture by women to celebrate, bless, and encourage other women. Rather than envy the job or home or family of another woman, they proclaim these words, Eshet Chayil, to one another. Woman of valor. You passed a difficult test? Eshet Chayil. You were hired for a new job? Eshet Chayil. Bravely faced walking into a doctor's office for a round of tests? Woman of valor. Woman of courage. Eshet Chayil. Friends, I look around this room today and see about 150 women of valor. I see cancer fighters and survivors. I see adult children who spend hours courageously caring for ailing parents. I see women who bravely speak the truth to their children in love, even if those words of truth are not what the child wants to hear. I see mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers who have spent hours and hours sitting up long into the night with little ones who are ill. I see teachers in front of me, many of whom fill in as surrogate moms for many of the little ones in their classrooms. I see nurses and doctors in front of me who enter a patient's room with strength of mind and compassionate hearts. You know, that to-do list I mentioned a while ago, the wake up, do something amazing, go back to sleep? I see in front of me 150 women who do that every single day. Every one of us has different amazing thing to do with our days. Some are in the thick of raising little ones. Some are serving as prayer warriors in the season of life. Some are caring for elder family members. Some are out in the community working with integrity. No one's task is more or less valuable or important. What is important is that we enter into whatever is on our to-do list with courage of conviction and strength of heart, with valor, if you will. As we go from this place today, I pray that your heart will be able to hear me when I say to you, Eshet Chayil, my friends, women of valor. It is an honor to be in a community with you, and I pray that we will begin boldly proclaiming those words over one another as we all start to celebrate the ordinary, everyday things God has called us each to do. As mentioned in the article, traditionally on Erev Shabbat or Friday at sundown, the Eshet Chayil is recited or sung by a husband to his wife, and I will play a short clip of it for you in a moment to hear what it sounds like. But even if there is no woman present, it is customary to state it, and it makes a lot of sense for Messianics to do it as well, because remember, as followers of Yeshua, we are, both men and women, members of his bride. But even though the song is called Woman of Valor, even men who are part of the bride of Messiah can be included in this, and we can all imagine that our bridegroom, our wonderful Yeshua, is singing this to us.
ואת עלית על כולנה שקר אחר והבל היופי אישה יראת אדוני היא תדהר ידיה והללויה בשערים מעשיה.
As men and women in the body of Messiah, we are responsible for the upbringing of godly seed for the Lord's kingdom. In some cases, this may be physical children, but it may also be spiritual children. For it is written, "Rejoice, O barren, you who do not bear. Break forth and shout, you who are not in labor. For the desolate has many more children than she who has a husband." There are many ways we can be fruitful and carry on a godly legacy, even if we are not able to pass our faith onto our own biological children. We plant seeds of kindness whenever we do something loving for someone else. We plant seeds of love when we give of ourselves selflessly and serve others. We plant seeds of joy when we smile at someone that may be having a difficult day, or bless someone who may not be able to bless us back. Our faith is not easy, but any sufferings we withstand in this world will be repaid at some time in the future by our wonderful Lord. He or she who continually goes forth weeping, bearing seed for sowing, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. As the seed bearers of the Lord's kingdom, we also plant seeds when we teach the Torah and the rest of the Bible to others, which can be referred to as our spiritual or even physical children. This is perfectly exemplified in the Shema, commonly translated as, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes." The commands of the Lord are not a burden. They are seeds that, when we obey him, makes us fruitful, able to pass those seeds on to others. Speaking of seeds, like all the biblical women and men throughout the scriptures and throughout history, including today, who have ever shared their faith with others by sharing the love of Yeshua, I felt it fitting that this week's recipe would consist of light menu items that are either high in seed content or actually made from seed themselves. The special double recipe is sesame seed hummus and homemade corn chips. I truly hope you enjoy making and eating these easy recipes on Shabbat to commemorate the Tazria Torah portion each year or anytime. So for the hummus, the ingredients are 3 tablespoons of toasted sesame seeds, 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 2 cloves of garlic minced, 15 ounces of chickpeas or garbanzo beans, or 1½ cups cooked, drained in the liquid reserve, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, 1 pinch of ground cumin, salt to taste. For the directions, in the bowl of a food processor, place the toasted sesame seeds, olive oil, garlic, drained chickpeas, lemon juice, and cumin. Process until completely smooth, scraping down the sides of the bowl as necessary, and adding reserved chickpea liquid a tablespoon at a time to thin out the hummus. Taste and add salt as needed. Process again. Transfer the hummus to a container and cover and refrigerate until ready to serve. Before serving, add a pinch of paprika and or sumac and a drizzle of olive oil if desired. Part 2, the corn chips. The ingredients are 1 cup of cornmeal, 1 tablespoon of oil, a half teaspoon of salt, and 3/4 cups of boiling water. For the directions, preheat the oven to 400 degrees. Mix all the ingredients in a bowl. Turn the dough out onto a baking sheet lined with parchment paper or a well-oiled baking sheet. Spread dough out evenly and thinly across the pan. You may score the dough into chip shapes or leave it whole and break it up later. That's what I did. Bake for 10 minutes at 400 degrees. Allow to cool on the pan and break apart. Both recipes will be listed on the Sharon's Messianic Journey printable section of YeshuasTemple.com, and they are free if you would like to download and print them. If this video has been helpful or a blessing in any way, please feel free to share it with friends, family, coworkers, or anyone you may feel may be blessed by it. Also, please stay until you reach the end screen or in the description below in order to see if there might be another related video or playlist on this channel that might interest you. I will also be pinning a comment below about how the recipes came out after we tried them for Tazria Shabbat, and if you try it and would like to let us all know how you like them or what you might do to improve on the recipes, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. May your Tazria Torah portion Shabbat be blessed, and may the Lord richly bless and keep all of you and your families.